Today we are out here in the affluent Melbourne suburb of Brighton. I'm shooting the X100V, testing out the KODACHROME 64 film recipe from FUJIFILM Weekly. Let's get it. KODACHROME was a legendary film first introduced in the 1930s for cinematography. In the 1960s, it was improved, adapted for various different formats, and released in the 25 speed and also the 64 speed that we know today. It became known as one of the most reliable film stocks for professional photographers. Legendary American photographer Steve McCurry once said the following: "Velvia made everything so saturated and wildly over the top, too electric. KODACHROME had some more poetry in it, softness and elegance. With KODACHROME, you take it out of the box and the pictures are already brilliant." If I'm being completely honest, I haven't spent enough time shooting the actual film to give a fair comparison on how realistic the simulation is, but I have spent a week or two shooting this recipe on my X100V and I have some honest thoughts to share. Firstly, I love the way it performs in the sun. Although, to be honest, almost every simulation I've tried so far looks good with vivid, colourful sunlight. The tones look rich and deep and there's a really pleasing softness to it too. I have to say my favourite aspect is probably the way it renders the blue tones, although I do find the reds really pleasing too. The recipe is really subtle with the grain. There is just enough here for a little bit of texture, but it's not the first thing you notice about the shots, which I really like. In overcast conditions, it does tend to feel a little more muddy in my opinion, maybe a little bit too green or yellow in the shadows. It's not really a fault of the recipe, I'd say. If it was a real film, this is definitely more similar to how it would behave. It's just something to get used to. It's hard to train your brain to accept imperfections on digital format when you know how easy it would be to correct. simulation also has a DR200 dynamic range setting. I learned recently that this actually means it's underexposing by 2 stops and then pushing the shadows digitally to save those highlights in the image. I think this is actually a really good middle ground. You do feel it a bit if you're exposing right on the needle. I think a lot of these images I shot somewhere around half a stop over what I normally would, and that seemed to work quite well. I think I'll be using this over the Astia and the Portra for a little while. You sort of get some of the vividness that you get from the Astia, some of the softness that you would get from the Portra. It just seems like a really good in-between.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider checking out the one on screen now. I walk around Melbourne and give you my review of the Portra 800 recipe. Cheers.